Good morning, everybody. Okay, let's see. It is Saturday, February 4th. Again, with the arbitrary page numbering, I am still working on page 53. I continue to be a few days behind, but I'm trying to make peace with that for two reasons. First of all, the next thing, once I finish this page, the next thing I'm doing is the full bleed 2-page spread. And I've allowed myself, because it's 2 pages, 2 weeks to do that. But I don't think I'm going to need 2 weeks to do that. So I think that'll be my opportunity to get back on track. That's number one. The other way I'm trying to make peace with that is the fact of being behind is, and I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the camera as usual because I have my workspace set up differently than normal for the SketchUp portion we're going to get to. But anyway, the other way I'm coming to terms with being behind is I'm trying to take the long view of this. I've drawn almost 53 pages, page a week, for now more than a year. Do the math. 53, carry the 1. Anyway. To do a page a week for 53 weeks and to only be about 48 hours behind, that's not bad. That's not bad. That's like I'm, behind an hour a week. Like that's in the grand scheme of things, not a bad pace. So maybe I'm just going to have to, I'm not going to adjust my preferred deadline. My preferred deadline is still to be finishing a page Friday night, starting a new page Saturday morning. I haven't been hitting that in a long time. I've always been like at least a day or two behind. Not always, but for months now. I'm not changing that because, like I said, it's Parkinson's law. If I start to say, like, you know what, new rule, new pages start on Monday, there's a good chance I could end up starting new pages on Wednesday. Just so, no, we're going to leave it where it is. It's a small corralling restraint for me. But intellectually, if I take, I'm just give you a moment of candor, who cares? Like, it's fine. Okay. Oh, Ronnie. How you doing, buddy? Today, what I had on the agenda, I was going to do a little SketchUp tour. I was going to do a look at the SketchUp model of the Airport Roadhouse from DvsM 1975. The house where the back half of that comic takes place in Willcox, Arizona. Where do I want to start with this? So, as you know, a lot of you who are regular watchers probably already know, I do use SketchUp to help me visualize spaces, locations, 3D spaces, however you want to describe it. It not only is a great assist when it comes to perspective, I find that I use it more often for other reasons. Like the perspective perk is nice. I use it more often, though, to make sure my scales are consistent between like characters and objects, characters and rooms, spaceships and backyards, like whatever, like just making sure that the scale, I'm not like slipping on scale. That's just a little pet peeve of mine when I see it in movies or in comics or anywhere where I can tell like scale is shifting, like this CG creature is sometimes this big, but other times looks that big, like, and it's varying. or, you know, a space like, well, how big is this room? And how are we, like, it seems like the room just suddenly got bigger or smaller. Like, that stuff drives me crazy. So it helps me kind of check myself, like where, you know, how big are things in relation to other things. It also just saves me a lot of mental visualization. I guess it saves me a lot of visualization. I guess you don't need the word mental there. If, for example, like in 79, let's say I've got a conference table with all this stuff on it, coffee cups and a projector and pens and ashtrays and all these things, okay? And you go into the room and you see it from this angle. And now we're reversing the shot and we're on the other side. Me having to figure out, like, all right, so if I looked at this table with all this stuff on it, from the other direction, where are all those cups and pens and ashtrays and projector? That stuff makes me want to hang myself. Like, yes, you can do it, and of course lots of people do, and yes, you can even cheat it. You don't have to be a stickler about making sure that coffee cup is in exactly the same spot as it was before. But I feel burdened to do that. It's another thing, it's a pet peeve of mine when I see that, and it's like, wow, we're playing really fast and loose with stuff in the frame, you know, where just people are just kind of like, yeah, it's over here, it's over, I don't know, the chair's here, whatever. And like, it's always kind of shifting from panel to panel. I hate that. SketchUp allows me to enforce some sort of consistency in that way as well. But we'll get more into SketchUp. First, the new tradition featuring 3 books from Gary's enormous library, which this is part of it, you see back here, and then there's more books out in the front room, and there's books stacks next to the bed, and everywhere, there's books everywhere. I have a problem. But starting a few weeks ago, Dee, when she was here, she's like, I want to know about those books in the background. And so I decided to start pulling 3 per stream to talk about. I try my best not to think about it too hard. I'm not trying to curate my selection. I just try to pull 3 and say, like, these are 3 books. So first, I love this book, and I think anyone who's interested in not only the history of comics, but anyone who's especially interested in manga and anime should check this book out. This is, and I don't know Japanese. This is my best stab at how to pronounce this, but it's manga Kamishibai. I think that's how you would say it, Kamishibai. I think the emphasis is on the shi, but someone feel free to correct me if you know Japanese. The Art of Japanese Paper Theater. So what is this? Kamishibai is, how would I describe it? What's interesting about it is there's no real equivalent to it in the United States that I'm aware of. If you know of one, once I explain it, please elaborate. But this was a very popular art form in Japan. It goes way, way, way back, but especially between like the 1930s and into the early 50s. Just when television started, like Americans had defeated Japan in World War II. There was military occupation there, and started radically changing, and television started really popping up. That was sort of the coup de grace for Kamishibai, and made this art form kind of just disappear and was replaced by manga and anime. The earliest forms of anime, I mean, we're talking about the 50s, but you know what I mean. I've seen it referred to as kind of the grandfather of manga, or like, you know, the immediate predecessor. I don't know if you can totally draw a straight line. What I would say is safe. Like that I would quibble about. What I would say is, like, this was the dominant form of comic-like visual entertainment until manga really turned into its own thing. So what was Kamishibai? Kamishibai were basically the people who do this, the narrators. They would be on foot in towns. You'd find them just wandering around. They would have these little stages, these little wooden stages, almost like the little portable puppet theaters. That is something you could either roll or carry. You could open it up. There'd be a little stage on it. But rather than puppets, you would have still, like basically comic panels. And the narrator would, you know, tell this story about whatever, like a battle in World War II, or some myth from, you know, some folklore, or some, you know, made up ghost story, or whatever. They would tell this like a story, and then, like, you know, pull these cards like to reveal new panels as it went. And so people would sit and gather around this thing, and the narrator would do this whole performance and talking and like reveal these stills. So it's not exactly like, it's not as granular as maybe comic panels, where you're going like very moment to moment to moment. It would, I think of it more as like an illustrated book where the narrator is reading it, but there are these main like images. So let me show you some examples. Okay. This is one that was apparently called Ninja by Night. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. So you can imagine, like, it's almost like storyboards for something. And they'll go through and tell the story. And you can see, like, when you look at the art especially, it has a, you can see at least the visual influence on the manga that came not long after. But it also is more, because these are, you know, there's fewer panels. They're way more finished and involved and painterly, I guess. And then getting a little bit later, I mean, look at some of this, like, then you can absolutely see like Japanese cartoons, you know? It just feels like, if I told you that this was, you know, a promotional image for some old anime from the 60s, like, you would buy that. But that was, I believe that example is pre-World War II. And then once you get into World War II, there's a lot of stories related to that. It's really cool. It's really, really cool. If you're even a little interested, like I said, in the history of comics, or especially the history of manga and anime, you totally want to check out this book. Again, for anyone who's interested. Manga Kamashibai. I love it. I love looking through this thing. It's really interesting to me. And it is, like I said, there's no real Western equivalent to this that I'm aware of. I don't know of any weird little comic stage shows, like traveling stage shows here in the West. Okay, so that's book number 1. But now switching to the West, this just came up. I have not read it yet, but I'm fascinated with, like, I understand, like, I know something about what this is about, but I have not read this book yet. Pulp Empire. The shorthand for this is, it's gotten good reviews. I'm very excited to read it. The basic premise is, everyone's, you know, who's into comics remembers there was like the comic authority in the 50s that was cracking down on all the sex and violence and stuff in comics. Comics were ruining kids. Comics were going to create this apocalyptic hellscape with all these psychopath monster kids who had grown up on them, and it was ruining America, blah, 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 blah. Okay, yes. But prior to that, the government actually spent a lot of time working with pulp comic companies and creators, trying to get what they felt was like, you know, the useful, appropriate, interesting, or, you know, manipulative messages they wanted into these stories. It would be very nationalistic, very like pro-war, very anti whatever they were against at the time. Like they would really try to like let's do, like, we need a lot of good pro-war comics. We need a lot of good anti, you know, East comics. We need comics that are anti-communism. We need comics that are, you know, and like, and the comic companies were sort of playing along. And it's, to me, what's interesting about it, not only just that historical aspect, maybe this is a stretch, I don't think it is, but my mind immediately went to like the Mujahideen and like Al-Qaeda and all this stuff where, you know, these examples from history where we sort of, our government kind of helped things along for a little while with somebody, in this case, the comics. And then it got like, it was like, oh, we've kind of lost control of the dog here. And then now we're again, like now we gotta, oh, we built a fire and now it's spreading. That was, I mean, I just think it's sort of interesting that in, you know, the 30s and 40s, the government was like, here, we'll give you ideas for stories for your comics. Like, it'd be really cool if you could write about this or this or this because it helps us. And by the 50s, comics were exploding, and now the government's like, oh, whoa. Like, we need to tamp this down. This is getting away from us. It's an interesting concept. Not even a concept, interesting history. But like I said, good reviews, lots of examples. Yeah, here's just weird propaganda stuff that they were seeding into comics, pulp comics at the time. Very excited to read this. Probably will not get read till I'm done drawing a comic, but anyway. And then last and but not least, this was a book I picked up in an antique store. The Old West Time Life series, The Gunfighters edition. This is actually a book that my dad had when I was a little kid, and I used to love reading it. And at some point, he decided he didn't need his Time Life Old West books anymore, and he tossed them or donated them or whatever he did. And I had since forgot about it, but I was in an antique store a couple years ago and saw this and remembered reading this book as a kid, and I just had to get it. It's you have to be a certain age to remember this. Time Life was this publisher that would put out these book series. So you'd have like 20 of these in a series. And usually it was a deal like the first one they would sell you for like $10, but then you were signed up and each future book was like 25 or something like that. And if, as long as you didn't cancel your subscription, you would gradually get this whole collection on whatever the topic was. This Old West one, I think he had the whole set, but this was the one I liked most. And the reason I'm pulling it, and this will sort of feed into the SketchUp topic, and it has all these like information on Jesse James and Wyatt Earp and all that stuff. But there was, on the shootout of the OK Corral, there's this diagram of where everyone was and the layout of that little corner. And I never thought about it, but like I remember staring at this diagram, like really studying this diagram, probably for hours as a kid. Like I just thought this was really cool. And it just occurred to me just like a couple years ago, like this is almost, like this is very similar to stuff I do for my day job now. Like drawing out, like this is where this person was, this is where the houses were, this is where this person was shot. So anyway, it's just sort of nostalgic for me, but also weirdly full circle. Let's get to SketchUp. Okay, so my plan today, I'm going to show you the model I created, the 3D model I created of the house in DvsM 1975. I'm just going to kind of give you a tour of it and talk about little decisions I made. If there are any questions, throw them out there while I'm doing it, and I'll try to answer them. Once I've gone through that, I might show you just quick, this is not going to be a SketchUp 101 stream, but I might show you just a quick, like, how you make a thing in SketchUp. If there is interest in like a SketchUp 101 for comic artists or whatever, I would be open to that once I'm done drawing DvsM 1979. That's something where we could do a couple weeks of just streaming, like, let's make some stuff in SketchUp and I'll show you how it works. I will just kind of show you very basically how it works. It's very easy. I think that's the main thing I would tell you is SketchUp is very easy to learn. It's kind of made for any idiot to be at least fair at if you just put in a couple hours of playing with it. It's pretty intuitive. You're basically using the same 4 tools over and over and over, and it's just like anything else in art. Once you know these basic principles, now it's just, you know, you just applying them over and over and over and over and being patient, and eventually you can end up with something kind of cool. I had never used, look at this. It's a tour of a potential property on the market. Yes, please do. So I had never used SketchUp at all until I had my current day job, which for people who, you know, somehow missed this, I work for basically a prosecutor's office. I make visual aids for use in criminal trials. SketchUp comes up when I need to recreate, if for some reason we want to visualize a crime scene for a jury, like what this apartment looked like, what this car situation, you know, how these cars were arranged next to each other, what the trajectories were through this room with the like bullet trajectories, whatever, like even like victims, like this is how the victim was positioned, this is how the bullets went through the victim, like anything where you want a 3D visualization as opposed to me just drawing it, I go to SketchUp. I am, excuse my vulgarity, but I've had this conversation a few times with people, fully fucking aware there are better 3D programs out there. Yes, I know. Yes, I've used them. Yes, I'm okay with those too. SketchUp has a lot of advantages, okay? Not only, especially if you're just starting out, especially if you've never messed with a 3D program before, very easy to learn. But setting that aside, for my purposes, let's stay on day job first. I need a 3D program that I can run in real time manipulable, okay? On anything, a laptop, a pad, any weird computer I've never seen before. I don't know what the RAM is. I don't know what kind of memory, I don't know what the processor speed is, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, hold on just one second. Sorry, I can't stay longer. My meds are kicking in and making me tired. Keep up the great work, buddy. Hey, you know, take care today and no problem. And there's always the replay if you want to check it out later. But take care, Ronnie. SketchUp will run on almost anything. Like if I'm working with an attorney at work and they do all their presenting from a Microsoft Surface tablet they carry to work, I know I can install a SketchUp viewer and it'll run fine off that, okay? There's no equivalent for that. Now, if I'm going to pre-record something, like a pre-recorded 3D tour through something, yeah, you could probably use a lot of different things for that because now it's just a MP4 or whatever, who cares? But if I need something that's freely manipulable, where at any time you can change your view of the model, zoom in, zoom out, whatever, as far as I'm concerned, this is the only game in town. Okay. For my comic life, it's also useful because not only is it quick and easy and there's no fuss, I don't need it to be elaborate. Again, like going back to the beginning of this video, I'm mostly looking for perspective, and if I've got this room arranged this way and I rotate the room 180 degrees, what does that room look like now? I don't want to have to sit and kind of figure it out and graph it out and, you know, chart it out. Like, just show me real quickly, like how, you know, how, where's this lamp end up and where's this look like and how far, what's the that's like, it works for that. And it also works for relative sizes, especially since SketchUp, when you're building things, you can enter exactly, like there's a scale thing. So if I like have a 3-foot high table that's 4 feet wide, 4 by 3 feet, you know, on top, I can make it exactly that, and I can put in a figure for a 5.5 foot or 6 foot tall person, and I can put in a lamp that is this tall. I can put in a door that is this wide. Now, and I can put them all in the same space and visualize like how big they all are compared to each other. Like that's, I don't need to be using 3D Max or something to figure that out. SketchUp is fine. It's fine. Gets the job done. Okay. With all that out of the way, let's see here. Could I get at least one person to say, A, you can see the model, and B, you can still hear my voice? Because I've never shared SketchUp before, and I don't know if it's going to do anything weird. I will wait. Anyone? Bueller? I see people are viewing. Awesome. Okay, thank you, Scott. All right, so for anyone who's read DvsM 1975, this is the house on Airport Road. Airport Road is a real road in Willcox, Arizona. This is not a real house that is in Willcox or ever was in Willcox, but it's based on houses in the area that I imagine this took place in Willcox, in terms of when it was probably built, how old it is, stuff like that. Oh, looks like we got, here we go. Mr. Lost. How you doing? Oh, there we go.
Hey, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Not really. You're a little distant.
Am I a little distant? You know.
Yeah, you sound a little quiet.
We got into.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah, you sound. I feel like there's something between us, Scott. I feel like there's something.
It's a screen, and then another screen.
The screen. Yeah. No, you do sound a little.
How about now?
Oh, there we go.
I'll use this little microphone thing. How about
how about that microphone? Okay.
How about me not being a dumbass?
See, now, I'm glad Scott's here because Scott is also a user of SketchUp to assist in his
SketchUp.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, not just a user of SketchUp. Let's see here. Do the vehicles come with the house? No, the classic Chevy is not. The vehicle in the backyard was seized by the federal government. Okay, so
what about the tricycle?
The big wheel is all yours, all yours. Yes. So this is what I did is I looked at a lot of houses from that era and cobbled together what I thought would be an equivalent house that would totally fit in that neighborhood in that era, you know, would look right. I also did lean a little bit on my day job familiarity with what a lot of these houses look like on the inside and how a house is put together. I do a lot of 3D modeling of houses at the day job. And so you'll see as we go through it, there are little decisions I've made and where things are and how places are laid out that are informed by that. So, but let's do a quick tour of the outside. This is an angle that's similar to what you see in the comic. See it from the front here. the side, nothing interesting really on this side of the house. You do see on that back, I imagine this, and we'll get into this more when I pull the roof off, which we will see inside the house. This back area, I imagine, was an add-on, like a later add-on, which you see a lot in this era of house. Usually they're kind of like these, especially like very inexpensive, modest houses. They can be very just box-like and small. And usually there's this, I imagine this house was probably built 30s or 40s. And then an add-on was made maybe in the 60s, something like that. But that's just backstory that doesn't really matter. So now we have the backyard with the curious vehicle.
Very curious.
Very curious. Okay, so here's the top, and here it is without the roof. Here's the layout of the Airport Road house. We're going to move through it a little bit where I can talk about little decisions I made. But one of the rooms that you do see in the comic is the living room. This is pre-mess. If you've read DvsM 1975, there's maybe a few corpses in this room. There's some damage to the wall. There's some stuff knocked over. You could tell something had happened there before the events of the comic, and then they show up and it's basically a crime scene. You can see, this is really informed by a lot of very modest homes I remember from my childhood in the late 70s and early 80s in rural Arizona. These very, very basic, with the right down to the rusty brown shag carpet, the wood panel walls, the strange plaid couch. Like, I tried to get those little details. Now, a lot of this, obviously in my black and white comic, is not going to come through. But this is just me kind of having fun when I'm making the model. It's like, what does this look like in real life? And then when I draw it, I have to decide how to reinterpret it. But what does this place look like? Got your little magazine caddy here, but
Caddy daddy.
Yeah, your little TV car. And then this was something, a lot of these older houses were built with no AC at all. And this would have been a late add-on, this evap cooler that kind of pokes through the wall.
Man, your details are just so bonkers. It's just like, man, you really make sure that everything is accurate. It's very cool.
I try, and I don't think, arguably it's not necessary, but I enjoy it, and I do believe, while it's not necessary, it adds a little something to, when people are reading the book, they feel like, yeah, this looks like a real place. Like this, it makes sense. It looks like a place that you could be in.
Absolutely. Yeah, the devil is in the details, as they say.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's important for your book to come off as, as professional as possible. And if you can add those little details, it's something you think about, and not only that, enjoy on top of it. It's a great thing to have in your books and in your models.
Yeah, I think I have to believe it translates, but even if it didn't, I think it does. But let's say hypothetically it did. Let's say there is some troll in the comments saying, who cares about this stuff? You wasted a lot of time. Just draw more.
Are you talking about Squatch?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm talking about Squatch. I'm talking about somebody. Some horrible person on the internet would probably say that. I think it's like, well, this, to me, even if you believe that, and even if that was representing the entire audience, this is also, I think it's actually not also, it's primarily your journey, your art, your, this has to be satisfying to you. This has to be fun to you. It needs to be fulfilling to you. This is fun for me. Like, it's fun for me to design this little 70s house and figure out what does it look like. Like, does it really matter? I don't know. It matters in the sense that I'm enjoying it, and that maybe, like, it makes the process enjoyable for me. And that's enough reason in and of itself, I think. And if it does add something to the comic, even better.
How much time would you say it would take you to create this? How long did it take you to create this home?
That's a good question. Probably not as long as... At this point, I was fairly experienced with it. So I would say, and you do it little by little. I think you get the floor plan and the basic shape done in almost no time. And then you're just kind of deciding little details. I would, like a couple days.
Okay. Now, are
And
you
not solid, you know, a few hours here, a few hours there, but
right?
I would say within 2 or 3 days, like you have
Yes.
like, yeah, I think this is it.
Steal the time where you can. Now, are you making the furniture and stuff like that, or is that something you're importing from the warehouse?
Most of it I've made, except for like I think I imported that toilet.
Right. Right. Yeah.
We'll look at
No
there.
need to spend time
I
sculpting
don't
a
need to
toilet when
sculpt
you
the
can just
toilet,
download
especially
it.
since I wasn't even sure if you would see it, you know, in the comic.
Mhm.
So it's like I'm just laying out the bathroom for where it is, but it doesn't, you know, whatever. And in fact,
Is that the furnace?
that's the hot water heater
The
in the
what?
backyard,
Jeez, man. The
covered up in
accuracy.
some plywood. So Blake, the kids won't touch it.
I see.
As a matter of fact, you know what? I think this is an older version. I think I reversed this bathroom because I decided all the plumbing was in this wall.
Wow.
So like, because that's another thing from like work, I realized like generally you locate, like you've been in houses where like all the plumbing in the kitchen might be up against all the plumbing in the bathroom. They might share a wall. So it's like when you're building it, you have the same kind of network of stuff. I think I realized that this is actually an older version of the model where I reversed this bathroom, if I remember right. Actually, let me see here. I've got a copy. DvsM 1975 right here. Let's see what I did.
Yeah, that's an amazing attention to detail, dude. So crazy. It's interesting you had thought of doing this subject this week, and I actually had time to hop on because I'm kind of dealing with this exact thing in the book right now. It's like I have a SketchUp model, but it's a little wonky. It's just like, okay, I thought I had the floor plan down right. I think I did a little bit of research. I saw the measurements that I'm supposed to use. I think I even used a existing blueprint as a jumping off point. And I was like, okay, everything should be to scale. And then when I created it, everything is super tight. And I'm just wondering if like my furniture is too big or what's going on. So I might have to enlist someone on Fiverr to help me out because, man, it's like this doesn't seem right. Like this couch seems off compared to this, and I got a lot of the furniture from the warehouse, and it's just
Oh
like
yeah.
this should be to scale, but for some reason it isn't.
Not
So,
always.
yeah,
Not always. Like
I found this out.
yeah. So you know what? And I would be. You don't have to, and however you want to handle it, but I would be happy to look at the model just
Oh,
to
I would
see. But
love it. Yeah. Let me know how bad of a job I did there. But I think it's relatively decent.
I'm sure it's yeah. So, but what's nice about, and this is something you end up doing a lot. If I'm building stuff, I know how big it's going to be, because you know I'm entering that information. But when I'm downloading stuff from, like I think I made that fridge, but I didn't make this like old wash sink.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can see the icons. There is a measure tool in here where you can see like, so this is 2'11" off the ground, which seems right to me. I'm sure I checked this when I made it, but like, you know, thinking about like how wide is something, how tall is something, like how high are these counters?
Right.
There. And it will lock to yeah, there we go. 3'3", which is about right. I mean, that's fair. I think all my door widths are probably 36. Yeah, 3 feet, which is kind of standard. Now that, just for weird geekery here, might be not totally authentic to this era. 3 foot wide doors are sort of the standard now. Exterior doors are, that's just a good rule of thumb. If you're trying to figure out how wide is an exterior door, you can go measure one in your house. Assuming it's a later build right now, it's probably going to be 3 feet almost all the time. Older houses, there wasn't that norm. And if you go through some older houses, every door width is totally different. Like it's kind of bizarre. You'll find weird little 2 foot wide doors and closets and things. You'll see like it's just, and everything in between. For simplicity, I just made every door width 3 feet. It's a little ahead of the times maybe, but that's what I decided for this, just to keep it simple.
Yeah.
My interior,
I've had work done on my condo,
Yeah.
And it was made in 1972 or something like that.
Hmm.
And so when people will come out and do measurements, like they're like, this window's a weird size. So you know, you get that
Yeah.
with like older buildings. It's just like this
Yeah.
isn't what it's supposed to be. Like, you
Yeah.
know, later on they figured out we should probably just have a unified measurement for windows, like certain sizes, and it'll make it
Yes.
for overall manufacturing. And but yeah, like with certain old buildings, it definitely wasn't the
Yeah,
case.
so you don't need to be custom cutting a door every time. So you can just go to like Home Depot and buy a door and you know it'll fit. But yeah, that wasn't always the case. That's also, I've got a little doorway in this house. This house was built in the 50s. There is a entryway to the kitchen that is, I think, just a little more than 2 feet wide. It is tight. Like and it's just not something you would see anymore. Like they just don't do stuff like that anymore. It's a little strange. So here's the kitchen and laundry room area. People who have read 75, you know, minor spoilers, remember that there were some aliens barricaded in here by one of the residents of the house. This, I imagine, is the laundry room. I didn't put a washer and dryer in there because I knew I was never going to see it, so it doesn't matter. But this is where I would imagine there was a washer and a dryer and maybe some like shelves for folding or a hanging line or something like that. And then for the back side of the house, the bedrooms. This is another one. This would be in the top left, Nathan, the infant's room, with just a rocking chair and a crib. And I think in the actual drawn version, I have like a chest of drawers in here and some curtains. But I didn't really care about that. I could draw that the day of. I just kind of needed a sense of like, well, where's the crib? Where does it make sense? Where's the window? The other rooms, I'm imagining this room on the right is probably the master bedroom. And the room immediately below Nathan's is probably Blake's. Again, I started with Blake's. I was like, oh, well, here's the closet. And then I thought, this doesn't matter because I know I'm never going in here in the story. So that's why there's no furniture in there. There's no closets. There's no, like, didn't matter. I just wanted to lay out roughly where things were.
Yeah, that's how the apartment for the second shift characters. So the Google SketchUp model that I have, the kitchen, the living room, and the bathroom are made up. But then everything else is kind of like a blank room. And it's just like, well, I roughly kind of know what goes in there, but overall, there's just nothing in there. It's something I need to get to because this is the character's home base. They'll always be in the apartment. So those are important details to have and to fill out. It's just a matter of time getting to it.
Yeah, and you could do that when it, you know, eventually something will get written where it's, oh, we're going into this room we've never seen. Then you build that out.
Yeah,
but
that was this issue. I had to draw one of the characters' bedrooms, and I was like, shit, it's empty.
Yeah, what's in there?
So I just made it up. I was like, okay, he's got a mini fridge, he's got a a dresser, a bed, obviously, and then he'll have some crap on the floor or whatever. Yeah, so you can make it up as you go. Going back to the measurements of the kitchen and stuff, where you're like, well, this is about 2.5, this is about 3.5. And like any artist watching the stream, if you want a quick shorthand how to do that, just go in your kitchen. Like that's what I've been doing. Like just simple stuff like, oh, how high is the doorknob on this? You know, like I'll go up to my doorknob and I'll be like, where does that come to? It's roughly about belly button height. You know, it's just like, okay, all right. And then so when you're drawing your characters in, you can kind of gauge real quickly where that, doorknob is supposed to be.
Right. And where are hinges, which I didn't bother with this because, again, I didn't think, well, you'll never see them and it doesn't matter. But in some of, I think in 97 in the holding cell, there's a couple views of the door where I wanted to figure out, like, well, where would the hinges be? Mm-hmm. You know, and that's usually that. And that's also where what's handy at work. I have this giant, it's like a tombstone sized book that's architectural standards. Okay. And all it is, it's like a dictionary of how high should steps be? What are the standard like slopes of a roof? Like how high is a counter? How wide is the doorway? How just basic things like that, where it's not 100% of the time, especially as we were talking about before, if you're talking about a build prior to a certain date, it's not, it's going to be all just off the charts. But at least for things built in the past maybe 40 years, it gives you a sense of like, okay, this is probably what it is. This is probably how deep a kitchen counter is. This is probably how high above the kitchen counter the cabinet will be. You know, those are usually pretty standard things. And that is my go-to. Every time I have to do something like build a kitchen or, yeah, figure out a doorway or figure out steps, like how high should these steps be, either here or back here. We have the actual concrete one.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, let's consult to see what's normal. And then I can push it in little directions if I want for whatever reason, but at least give me a ballpark without me having to go somewhere with my tape measure and measure like how deep is this step? How, you know, what's the normal, what's normal? But anyway, so that's pretty much the house. Obviously I spent way more time in the places I knew I'd be seeing because I'd be drawing it, or, you know, it was going to matter later. And then ignored the rest. But I did, you know, just out of force of habit, I did do little things like I don't know if you ever saw this window.
Yep.
In 75, I don't remember, but it's more what you would imagine, you know, for that kind of window. Like it wouldn't, that's an example of, you're not going to have this kind of window in the bathroom. You're going to have one of those, you know, these taller ones with the frosted glass, sort of a sliding type thing, etc. But anyway, any questions from anybody about this before we switch to just sort of basic SketchUp demo? Oh, one thing I want to add, if anyone, while people are thinking about that, this also helps me sometimes. It's another thing I like to use SketchUp for. If I know, so let's say I have things happening in this kitchen and I'm getting ready to thumbnail and I don't know, like, what would be a cool angle? Well, what would be cool? This allows me a little bit like a movie set to kind of go in here and kind of, you know, visualize like, well, what does it look like through this door? Like what's, you know, what, or what does it look like through the back door? You know, sometimes I can find like a panel idea and just like moving the model around and saying like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of dramatic. That's kind of interesting, you know? And I mean, you could, I think when I was playing with this, I didn't do it in 75, but I thought like it would be kind of neat. I didn't want to spoil the moment, but while the men in black were running into the house, if I angled it kind of like this and you can kind of see in the window, you could kind of probably see the alien body on the floor.
Yeah.
And like that might be a funny little like, you know, but I was like, no, I don't want anyone to see the alien early. I want to show the alien when I want to show the alien.
It's that shot specifically is a great framing device because, like, let's say you did decide to use that angle, maybe for a different scene or whatever, you can have one agent coming in through the doorway on the outside of the building, and then the frame of the doorway itself that frames the character. And then if you had the second agent already in the building, like maybe kneeling over the body so you couldn't see it,
right,
then the window itself also frames the other agent. So yeah, great framing device.
You could find ways, yeah, absolutely. And but this is what and this is exactly what I'm talking about. You can play with this model a little bit, even kind of aimlessly, just sort of look when you're just checking it, like you've made it and you're looking around, like, does everything look right? You might find little things that's like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of a cool view. And like, just make a note of that. And what's also cool about SketchUp, you're not gonna be able to see this because you can't see all the tools. But, like, you know this, Scott. There is something called scenes where you can add a scene and it will save that camera move.
Yeah.
So like, so let's say like, okay, right here, like, I don't know, I want to save. Let's make up a scene. Let's say, like you said, we're going to have one where we can see one man in black in the house, one man in black outside the house. We'll do a lower, because we don't want to show the body. We just want to show maybe this guy in the window looking at the body.
Yeah.
So we have all this. Let's see here. And camera. Let's see. Okay, So I don't know. See up here, we have this tab now, scene 12. So let's go back to overhead without the roof. Go in the intro view, but now we have scene 12.
Yeah, that's great.
Goes right back. See, so I can go through this model and start just saving things for later and say like, that could be a panel. That could be a panel, like, and just save shit.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll never use it. Maybe I'll have a different idea on the day of. Maybe I'll, whatever. But it's like, this is, you can find these dramatic or cinematic looking, like, oh, that's sort of interesting. And again, when it comes to like the perspective and all that nonsense, it's all kind of figured out for you.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't advocate. Now, this is a personal thing. I'm not pontificating. I wouldn't advocate just tracing over. I would say use this to look at. Maybe trace these like broad lines, like along the roof line and like whatever, like get yourself going with the shape. But then you hide this and you start going, oh, now do some drawing. That's how I prefer to do it. That is a personal thing. I'm not judging, and the way I've always seen it, I've said this in videos before. I've used SketchUp for my perspective. There is an element of tracing in that. Some people might balk. I would say, you know what? I made the SketchUp model. So I'm cheating off my own work. Like, if you consult your artist rulebook, your snooty artist rulebook, that's allowed. Like, I can crib my own work. I made the model, so I'm not, it's fine.
Honestly, I don't give a shit about those people.
No, neither do I.
Yeah,
neither
so
do
it's
I.
like,
I just know they're out there. I can hear them.
If they want to follow those rules, then they hate Jack Kirby. You know what I mean? It's just
they
like,
hate every artist they love.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
all of those old school artists that, like an older generation, if they grew up watching, reading those comics, looking at those comics, a lot of those artists had morgue files where they're basically just tracing off cars, tracing off trains, anything like that. And it's just part of how it goes. And then, like you said, you're the one that created the model. So who gives a shit? Right. And if you've ever drawn a building, if you've ever drawn a car freehand on your own, you've had that in your book, you're good. Like that's my state of mind. And like personally, where you said you had the scenes saved, like this angle saved. What I do is just I screen cap it. I'll screen cap it, and then I'll just drop it right into my page because like you, I created the apartment, and sometimes it's just helpful just to quickly get that out of the way because these pages take so much time. Just drawing comic books in general takes forever. So as a working artist, you need to be able to cut corners where you can. So, if you don't have that stuff, like if you don't have backgrounds just at the drop of the hat, you know how to knock it out. It helps a lot and it moves things along, and the more you do it, the more you will get better at creating backgrounds on your own, not so much needing the Google SketchUp. Like for certain scenes in like this particular issue that I drew, there's some stuff it's me screen capping my apartment the apartment at a certain angle and then just basically tracing over it and then freehanding stuff on top of it. So like another trick you can do if you're just going to straight up, if you're saving time and you're like, I'm just going to trace this bitch off. You can not use your snap guides or anything like that. Freehand your lines. So like place the building in there. And especially an exterior of a building, it really helps. Like if you place the image in there, lower the opacity, start on a new layer, and you freehand the line down it looks more organic. It looks more realistic. Yeah. So that's something that's a nice trick you can do. So while using, your Google image as a or SketchUp image as a template, doing it freehand really adds to like the realism of the building.
Absolutely. Christopher, I'm glad you dropped by and thank you very much. And I will talk to you next time. And then Philip, I believe, I could be wrong. I believe there is actually a free, yes, there's a subscription model. I believe there's a free version. It's all about, now this at least used to be the case, but I believe when you go to download it, it will give you, it'll kind of ask something like, what are you using this for? And basically the tiers are like for work or for play. Like, I don't know. I don't remember the language they use, but it's something like that. And if you pick for play, there is a free version. there are some features stripped out of it, but I can tell you, you'll never miss these features. Like now, I will double check that later, and I'll update this in my description if that's not true anymore. But I thought there is a free version of SketchUp. And then to jump off something you were saying, Scott, here's my attitude about tracing perspective. I see it a little bit like how they talked about calculators when I was in high school. As long as you know how to do this by hand, you can use a calculator. Like, you're allowed. Like, I have paid my dues drawing perspective the hard way. I've been, drawing since I was a little kid. I was born in the 70s. Like, there was never these sorts of assists before. I've done it. I know how to do it. It fucking sucks. I'm fine. Like, I've proven myself to myself.
Exactly.
So, like, it's like, no, I'm fine leaning on this now. Like, that's all right.
That's where you need to get with it. Exactly.
Yeah,
just
I give
do it
myself
on your own. Get comfortable with it. Know that you can do it.
Yes.
And then you're good from there, because like you said, it sucks. It's boring. Like, there's people that love drawing buildings. I don't know any of those people, but I'm sure they're out there, and
Same.
good on them. I'm excited for them. I wish I had the drive to want to draw buildings and cars over and over again. I just don't. And it's not part of the comic that I enjoy and I look for when I read comic books myself. Like, I'm not a car guy. It's not a big deal to me when I see cool cars. Like, there's some amazing artists out there that are just killer designers of vehicles. Like Sean Gordon Murphy, Daniel Warren Johnson. They can draw the shit out of some vehicles and make them look badass. And that's awesome. Like, if that's your strength, then lean into it. But it's not mine. And the vehicles and the buildings, they're just background elements. They're just elements to the story. They're not the story itself. So, you obviously want to have them in there. You need your scenes to look complete, and you have to have your audience know exactly where the characters are and what they're doing. So they're a necessity, but it's not a necessity for me to struggle to show you that I can draw this car and it take an extra 5 hours on a page, when it's just like, throw the, in Second Shift, they have a beater Toyota van. In the first 6 issues of that book, I freehand drew that van over and over and over again. Honestly, I can roughly draw the van without looking at a photo of it now. But I do have a SketchUp model that someone uploaded of that same van. And I'm like, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Like, I've already shown you guys I know how to draw this thing. I'm just putting it into scenes now and putting it at certain angles. And like, if I can't see in the model at that certain angle, I just make it up, So that's the other element of it. It's like, use the SketchUp models when you need to, but when you're in a pinch and you have to do a certain angle that you can't get with the SketchUp model, or just looks wonky to you. Like, there was a scene in issue 6 where it was like a Dutch downward angle of them in the living room with a Christmas tree. And I freehand drew it, and I was like, this looks pretty good, but I want to put them in this Google SketchUp model and see what it looks like. And it just didn't look as cool. And I was just like, this is accurate because it is the model and it's showing it at that angle, but it just looks weird and doesn't look as good as the freehand. And I consulted a couple of artist friends. I was like, which one of these do you like better? They're all, this one. And it was the freehand one.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can get a very accurate angle, but it kind of doesn't, I don't know, jazz it up enough. So sometimes you just got to do it on your own, and that works better sometimes.
And there are cheats. Like, I can say with my current book, 79, there's a big part of it is taking place in this sort of office environment where when I set the camera, which is another thing, actually, that might be fun to show people. So there's a tool in here. You can't see it, but it's something called position camera. It looks like a little, in the toolbox, it just looks like a little figure. So you see that little silhouette of a person.
Yeah, I remember that.
I can put that. So let's say, I don't know, let's say there's a person a few houses down. Well, that's way too far, but let's say right there. Wherever I clicked, it will do a view from there. And it sets the eye height, which is sort of interesting. So let's say someone's on this back step looking in the kitchen. Per SketchUp, this is if your eye height was 5'4", which again, that basically would be like maybe a 5'8" or 9" person. you know, like what that's eye height, not a person's height. But now you see I have this eye icon. I can look around from that height, from that position, which is, I think, kind of cool. Like, it's kind of fun to be, especially for a day job when I'm doing a crime scene or something. And it's like, what does this room look like if you walked in? You know, I can actually, there's an option, just like, let's say the camera's there. Now, the only thing that's a little funny about this is, it's something you can play with.
It almost seems too tall, though. Like, this almost looks, it feels like a giant looking down at it.
It does seem a little tall, yeah. And some of that, I suspect, so if you click on, you've probably done this, if you click on the zoom tool, down at the bottom right, you'll see this field of view. And that, I want to show how dramatically this can change things. So let's change field of view to 25 degrees. That's like super, you know, super tight. And we haven't changed position. Now let's change it to 75 degrees. So basically what this does is like how extreme like the perspective is. You see like how 75 degrees, like how wild that. So let's do, we'll do the intro view, which to me is, I think that's 50 degrees. Now let's change it to 80. Let's go back. You see how it extremely, like, it fisheyes the world, sort of.
Yeah,
in a weird
definitely.
way. Now, again, let's make it super flat. Let's say 10 degrees. It's almost like looking at a photo. It kind of just, like, well, not a photo, like a 2D diagram. Like, it kind of crushes all the perspective. That's not a very technical way to describe it, but basically that's, it really, that to me, now, I only end up using this in two ways. One, if I drew something small and I want to make it look massive, okay? So let's say this house, I drew this house to scale, but let's say actually I need this house for whatever stupid story reason. It's 100 times bigger than a normal house. I could say, you know. Now it looks like, you know, if you were an ant, like that, you know, now this is like what the house looks like, and vice versa. I also will use that for, again, if I'm looking for dramatic stuff. Like sometimes, so let's go back to that scene that we set.
Yeah, that one looked crazy.
That's a 35-degree thing. Sometimes playing with this, you can end up with something a little more dramatic or unusual looking. Like you can kind of push it in a funny way. That's sort of a fun thing to fiddle with. And I lost my train of thought because I wanted to talk about that.
Did you go over how to do the inside view?
The inside view in terms
of the apartment, like the roof is not gone. It is just, you could see inside.
Oh, just hidden. So yes. Okay. So intro view, the way I did that, and this gets, it's a little, when I say advanced, if you're just learning SketchUp, it'll be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, like slow down. But believe me, you'll learn this right away. It's not a big deal. Basically, I built the house, and then I select all the roof pieces. This almost works like Illustrator. It's actually a lot like Illustrator in terms of some of the principles. Basically, the way I made the roof a group. That's how it's described in SketchUp. And it's as simple as, I'll make another one right now. Let's say I want this wall, and this wall I'm just shift clicking, just like in Illustrator, and this wall, right click, make group. That's all you would have to do. And then it would become like this collection of objects. I did that with the whole roof. And then once you have it, right click. This is something we were talking about a couple weeks ago. Right click and hide, and it's gone. It's still there, but I can now save that to a view. So here it is. Like here's just the normal model with that as a group. Take this, hide. Now let's do, I don't know why we would want this, but let's do another saved scene. Scene 13. It saved that scene when I go to it. It remembers that I had hidden that group in that scene. So that's a good way to very quickly, you know, like go through like, okay, I want to be able to see this. And I do that a lot, especially when I was drawing this house. I think all these walls were like saved as groups, because sometimes like if I want, like I might want a view of this room, for example, which I did in the comic. Let's say for some reason I want it farther back. Well, now I'm in the wall behind me. So like I need to make this wall something I can hide. So when I'm doing like getting a reference of this view of the house, like I'm not, you know, this is where you do the little cheats. It's very much like a movie set. Like you'll read about how they do movie sets where all the walls of rooms are removable so they can put the camera wherever they want. If you watch something like Friends, you can sort of imagine like where the camera is should be outside the apartment, or you're looking at Seinfeld where the camera is, it should be outside the apartment. It's the same principle with this. To do that with SketchUp and still use it as a reference tool, you would want to break this room up into chunks like that you can hide, like turn on and turn off.
Yeah, you were graciously nice enough to let me know that after one of the episodes of Making Comics where I was talking about deleting the walls.
Deleting them, and I was like, oh no, don't do that. You don't have to do that. Yeah, that's terrible. So just to show real quickly, this will only take a second, but let's say we're going to make like just a 3-foot square table. SketchUp is very much based on, now Scott, this is remedial for you, but for anyone who's watching, it's like, how is this hard to use? I honestly believe it's very easy to use. And there are lots of really good like tutorials online. You can watch like a series of 6 videos where it'll start with very, very basics, like let's just make a box. Let's make a table. Let's make a room. Let's make a room with some stuff in it. And I promise you, if you just watch a couple of those videos, within a week, you'll be okay at SketchUp. Like it's not a complicated program. And from there, all those principles, it's just kind of elaborating on them and getting better and better at using them. But basically, as I mentioned, I think on the outset, there are like 4 tools in SketchUp you're going to use over and over and over to make anything, whether you're making a spaceship or a coffee table or just a box. Like it doesn't matter. It's all the same tools. I'm going to make a quick little 3-foot square wooden table. So I've got, this is what do they actually call this? Just the rectangle tool. You see right now I'm drawing a rectangle. On the bottom right, you're seeing all these dimensions. You can sort of by hand, like I try to find exactly, but let's say we want 3 foot by 3 foot. I can actually enter 3 foot, 3 foot. So here's our 3 by 3 table. Okay, now let's do the thickness of the table. We're going to be arbitrary. I don't know. That's probably about 3 inches. Let's say it's 3 inches thick this way. This is the push-pull tool. This is another one you're going to use all the time in SketchUp. It's basically how you make it, give anything like sort of a 3D, basically you give a Z-axis to anything you're drawing. So let's say, and now we're going to enter again 3 inches. We're going to do the table legs. I think the table legs should be, let's do 3 inches again, wide, square. The way I'm going to do that, there's a few ways to do that, but I'm going to do it by measuring out 3 inches from every side. And then I'm going to take the rectangle tool again, draw what will be the legs. Okay, edit. Delete guides, and now push-pull again. I don't know, we'll make the table legs 3 feet again. It'll basically just be a little boxy table. Group. Rotate those.
Bam. Now you got yourself an IKEA.
And now you got a table, a 3 foot by 3 foot scale table. And then now you can just add like little, I don't know, I want that top to look like it has a little bit of a relief, like a little something to it. So let's do Let's go 1.5 inches down. And then maybe you want to show that the legs, that's not all one piece, so you can draw that in. Again, this isn't like the most advanced 3D stuff in the world, but seriously, guys, like, and I'm talking through that, like I'm not as fast as I would normally work. That took me, what, a minute? I don't know, like something like that. And I've got a thing now that I can put a texture on that, and I've got a table. Everything in this model is made basically with all the steps I showed you. Like it's just doing it like more and more elaborately, you know, and thinking about how you would start, like what's the basic shape? In this case, it's a square. Okay, now how much depth are we gonna put it? We're gonna put this. Now we're gonna do shapes within shapes with the legs. Now we're gonna start fine tuning a little bit, add little details. It's all the same principles, whether it's the house, the table, the spaceship, any of it. Very fast, very easy. And like I said on the outset, this will run on anything. I don't care how bad your computer is, it'll run fine. Like it may not be as high res as you'd like. It may chug once in a while, but it'll work. So now, unless anybody watching would like to see something specific in SketchUp, I do have a little video I can show of me how I use it in a small way for backgrounds. In the comic, it's an example from '79. It's not spoilery. There's a little cameo by Scott Serkland in it, since he sat in for one of the characters in it. I think Jim Lujan is in it too. But does anybody need to see anything else in SketchUp? Anyone have a question about SketchUp while I have it open? Because I'm going to shut it down. See what's going on in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
It is very Simsy. What's funny is, like, for a video game thing, in learning this, I gave myself just arbitrary things to make in SketchUp just to, you know, get comfortable. And I think the first, I wish I had it here to show you. Maybe I do somewhere. Hold on, let me look. I recreated the first dungeon in the original Legend of Zelda in SketchUp. Just to, like, you know, it's like this will be an exercise just to, like, you know, figure out, get comfortable with the tools, get good at it, you know. Yeah, and I don't have it. I don't know. I mean, it's buried in my computer somewhere. I can't find it. But okay, let's see here. Goofy comments from Ed. Yeah, the big wheel. Big wheel takes me back to. Okay. Oh, there was something that you had said when you were talking about sometimes not being a slave to the model, drawing, you know, sometimes it'll look better if you deviate. That's absolutely true. I would also say that not every comic, maybe even most comics, this is not really that important, you know, like getting your perspective dialed in to be completely mathematically correct, maybe not important. There's a story, just for the Star Wars reference for the day, there's a story that Mark Hamill tells about the first Star Wars. I always thought was pretty funny. You can find it on YouTube. He said they were shooting the scene where they had gotten out of the trash compactor and they're running to the Millennium Falcon. And Mark Hamill says to Harrison Ford, like, our hair is all dry. Shouldn't it still be wet from, like, like, we were just in the trash compactor. Like, shouldn't our hair still be wet? Shouldn't there be a bunch of, like, schmutz in our hair? Like, you know, like, we all look like blow dried and, like, you know, and dried off now. And I guess Harrison Ford, I'm not going to do a Harrison Ford impersonation, but he said something like, kid, it's not that kind of picture. Like, and he's like, if they're looking at our hair, we're all in a lot of trouble. Like, you know, and I just thought that sort of applies. Like, there are some comics where if they're looking at the perspective, you're in a lot of trouble. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's not that kind of comic. I made a choice with the aesthetic and the approach of DvsM that's a little exacting. It's a little fussy with the detail. It's a little specific. And it's trying to give you this impression that this is a real place with real characters. It's the real world. And it's very much straight reporting of a thing that happened. So for the aesthetic approach that I've taken, I would say it does matter. For a lot of other comics, like, you don't need to worry about this. Like, it doesn't really matter. But.
Yep. Yeah, I think the eyeball test usually does it for most viewers, you know.
Yeah.
Like, if that's the system that you're doing, that's what you've been doing for the entire book, obviously stick with that. But I think certain shots, you just need something passable, you know, and people will just understand, like, yeah, I get it. Or, like, not even notice it, to be honest. Most non-artists don't notice certain things. Is from what I understand. They're like, I'll point stuff out sometimes, and they'll be like, oh, I didn't even notice anything like that. Because, you know, like the Harrison Ford line, it's not that kind of picture. Like, people are looking for, you know, like my books, it's like fun, action-packed, family adventure type stuff. So it's just like, that's the elements they're looking for. They're not checking my my
they're not saying
my
like
perspective lines.
Yeah, this perspective's all wonky. Boo. Like, I mean, that's, you know, that's just someone who's not approaching your comic with good faith. But but some comics, like, that's sort of a part of the whole thing. Yes. You know, is kind of like where it does break it if, you know, it's not, and vice versa. I think I could imagine comics where, you know, if you're doing like a weird kind of throwbacky, psychedelic, Robert Crumb kind of thing, you know, and you're getting really meticulous about those sorts of details, I think you're actually wrong in the other direction.
Right.
Like this is not, you're undermining your own approach. You know, you need to kind of make it all fit. So let's see.
There's a difference between, like, cartooning, you know, the cartooning method. It's like things are a little more open to interpretation, stuff like that. Like my characters, they're leaning more into this like manga, like it's an American fusion mixed with manga, like almost like video games as well. And so, like, I can do a giant cartoony mouth yawning or something like that, or laughing. But if you did that in your book, it would be like, what the fuck is going on? Like,
right, exactly. You would think,
I mean?
Yeah, you would think this has got to be some weird hallucination sequence. Like, I mean, it just wouldn't make any sense. Right, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Or if you did, I think in my books, I think if you did a lot of things that were very traditionally accepted comic book things, it would break it. Like, in my book so far, like, there's no third person narrator. You know, and I honestly think at this point, if I put one in, it would be conspicuous. Like, it would be a little, like, I think it wouldn't quite make sense. You know, I think it would break it. There's lots of little things like that where it's like, no, that doesn't play. So this was going to be for a larger video, and I think I'm just doing it today. I had done a little bit of screen recording of how I pull a reference out of a 3D model, and then how I use it when I'm doing my comics page. So there's 2 videos here. Each one is like 2 or 3 minutes. I haven't sped it up or anything. I would have if I had presented it in its own standalone video, but you can see. So here is, I'm going to let this run. This is a 3D set I made for DvsM 1979. It's this installation facility, this research facility with a conference room. I'm opening the program Overlay 2.1. This is another free program you can download. They'll ask you all the time to buy the full version, but you really don't have to. You can use it if you can handle the pop-ups. Overlay, I'm going to pause this because I want to talk about how great Overlay is. Overlay is a revelation. Like, I love Overlay so much in so many ways. What is Overlay? The easiest way to think of it, it's tracing paper for your computer. It allows you to open a program and fade it out, like, you know, kind of like half opacity, and have it as an overlay of some other program, which is a revelation. Like, that is like, it's like, oh my God, now anything I would use tracing paper for as a traditional artist, now I can do on my computer. I can overlay a SketchUp model over my Illustrator when I'm drawing, or over my Photoshop when I'm drawing. I can have a reference image in Photoshop and, you know, use that as like tracing paper, basically, and like be drawing in Photoshop with it. Any application you could imagine using tracing paper for, overlay will do, but then with the added advantage of on your computer. So I can use SketchUp or a video or anything as sort of like a tracing version over Photoshop or Illustrator or anything else. Sometimes it's the reverse. At work, what I'm doing often to make sure my virtual crime scenes are accurate, I'm overlaying, sort of like tracing paper, an actual crime scene photograph and building my SketchUp model using that as the reference and matching all my angles to that. It is so great. Again, free program. If you do the free version, I think about every 5 minutes, a little pop-up will come up and say, like, enjoying overlay? You know, like, and like ask you to buy it. I did end up buying it because it was like $10 or something. It's nothing. And I use it all the time at day job and with comic work. It's a great, 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 cool program. Some guy just hacked it together. It's a weird little indie programmer. Awesome.
Are you able to write that off since it's part of your job?
I probably could, but I generally, I learned from freelancing. I rarely write stuff off, because the wisdom I heard was that every time you write something off for your work, it just adds a non-0% chance you're going to get audited. So to really be like, so I, for example, would write off, like if I had to get some sort of special printer at home for printing work, like let's say it was still shut down, still COVID times, and I'm working from home and I need a special printer, and I went and bought that, I would write that off because I can justify it and it's a big expense.
Right.
But like little stuff like $10, no, I'm not going to do it. It's just not, I'll just eat it.
I write everything off.
Well, and more power to you, and you're probably fine. I had just heard like, you know, so I'm a little shy about it. But
no, I hear you. Yeah, it's all on your comfort level. My sister does taxes, and so she told me what I could and couldn't write off. And you know, it's like I have all of the stuff. I have all of the receipts. So even if I do get audited, it's just like everything's on the up and up. I'm not worried about it, you know. But it's all on your comfort level for sure.
Absolutely.
It definitely helps with your tax returns as well. Like the more stuff you're able to write off, like as a comic creator, you can write off gas you use to go to shows, food you eat, any kind of maintenance on your car, anything that you buy, paper, tablets, computers, printers, scanners, anything along those lines. You can write off Blu-rays. So
people carve out the square footage of their home office and like whatever rent, you know, like, I mean, you can really push it if you want. Yeah. But which I did back in my freelance days, but so I'm going to let this run again. So basically I'm using overlay. So this is a panel. It's not a finished panel, but it's a panel that I mostly got my characters in where I wanted them. And now I was like, okay, well, what's the background? What's this hallway behind them? What does that look like? So what you're going to see in this video is me doing the overlay of the panel I'm working on, and now positioning my model and trying to find like the angle I like, you know, that makes sense, that's to scale, and that I think, you know, makes for the best. So this is me going through some preset ones that had nothing to do with that specific panel, seeing if any of them are in the ballpark to go from there. I can tell already this is still wrong. I'm still finding it. It's too low, and yeah, there we go. But this is the process. This is basically how I'm doing it some of the time. I'm using my model to figure out, like, all right, I've made this scene. I've spent all this time making this scene. Now I've got my characters. Now I'm drawing. What should the background look like here? And I'm kind of looking for like what. And this gets into all the weird nonverbal sort of science of like, how do I want my lines pointing? Am I creating any tangents?
Right.
what like makes sense scale wise, what looks nice visually, what doesn't stand out too much, but what makes a nice, this is a very minimal one where you're barely seeing it. And the point isn't really the background, but I'm just trying to figure out like what looks sort of, kind of works.
Yeah, and that gives you a directional device as well, the background. So
yeah,
the background is pointing towards the female character, and so that usually will draw the eye towards her.
Yeah, these are the little, yeah, exactly. And also makes sense with how I'm always visualizing characters first, because that's where the drama is, that's where the visual interest is. But then it's like, okay, now how is the background going to support my characters?
Now,
So
is this part of the process that you normally do? Now, do you create your scenes, draw your characters, and then put your characters into a building or whatever? Like, do you add the scenery or the background afterwards, or do you
usually.
okay?
It
Yeah,
depends.
that's usually what I do.
What's the focus of the scene. So like in this scene, you have characters talking. So that the focus is the characters. Mm-hmm. There are scenes you can imagine where it's like, the point is whatever this room is. Or the point is whatever, like, I know I'm going to be drawing an alien or a dinosaur or something over here. So this is all the stuff around it. Like, I know the focus is basically the space. So I'll start with the space and then work the other way where it's like, okay, now where do the characters fit into this? So that was that whole video. So basically I settled on that angle, and then I screen capped. You see, I preserved the panel border in my overlay. So I know, like, okay, well, that's how big. So I screen capped, like, not the whole screen, but just that frame, like that. So now let's go to the second video.
I'm doing some lettering in the meantime, like while you're talking and stuff.
You bet.
Yeah, I'm trying to do 5 pages a day. So this issue will take me roughly 4.5 days to finish. So probably 4, just because there's only 2 more pages. So why not?
Very good. Okay, so now we're in Illustrator, which is the primary program I'm working in when I'm drawing. Sometimes I'm in Photoshop drawing and drag, but Illustrator is where pages get assembled. So wherever imagery is coming from, whether it's Photoshop, whether it's something by hand that I scanned in, whatever it is, it all ends up in Illustrator. Because that's like where my lettering is happening. That's where a lot of drawing is happening. That's where my page numbering and my panel layout, all that stuff is in Illustrator. So now we're back in the page that I was working on. This was page 5. So this was 40 some odd weeks ago. The characters aren't done yet. It's just enough where I was like, okay, let's figure out what's going on with the background. So now I'm placing the screen cap I made in SketchUp with overlay, where I'm now scouring for that. Now you'll see, like, it comes in way higher res than I need, or not way higher res, way larger than I need. Now I'm scaling it to I have it in Illustrator. If you see, it's real tiny writing, but I have like my cat is yelling. My Louie.
Hi. I hate SketchUp.
Oh my god.
You're a fucking tracer using SketchUp.
Tracer. So I'm dropping it on my background ref layer. So this is like, my pages are, if nothing else, usually set up into background and like my main art layer. And so this is background. Now that you can see, this is the raster image that I dropped in the back. I'm scaling it to where the panel was. And then, we were talking about it. Because it's this scene where it's basically just like tiles on the ceiling. You have the little baseboard, like at the very bottom there, that dark gray, and the doorway behind it. Yeah. This one I do basically just trace. It's like, well, here are your lines. Yeah. And like boom, 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 boom.
And that's a good shot too, because that The doorway actually, so even though the ceiling lines point towards the female character, the doorway with Dr. Wagner here, it frames him, so it draws you back to him as well.
Right. Yeah. It makes sense. Also, like what you'll see later in the book is that the character in the middle here, Dr. Luna, for the hardcore fans, he's talking to someone who's following him out of the room. So like he's turning back, it makes sense. The door is still visible. Like they're all coming out of that room. Like it all kind of, you know, it makes sense. It looks logical. It doesn't stand out in a dramatic way. I liked what you were saying about sometimes do the perspective lines by hand. It has a better effect. I do that from sometimes. I do that sometimes. I also sometimes will use like a rougher, like a brush rather than a line tool to kind of do a more organic looking line.
That's a great
But in
trick.
this case, for this office environment, this facility, this research facility, it was important to me that it all looks kind of pristine, kind of like, you know, that this is this, you know, and so in this case, it's like, no, I do like clean, sharp kind of draftsman lines because I want it to look like this almost weird clean room environment, you know, where it's everything is actually very precise. Where I will break that is if you get really close to something, like if a character is peeking around a corner, that's something where I will add a little bit of texture to the line because it can look a little strange. Like when you see like a very clean line right next to and right close to an organic looking character, that's where it looks weird. It looks kind of like a panel line or something like that. So then I'll add some kind of waver to it or something. But for this, it's like, no, clean lines are fine.
I started doing something. I was watching a YouTube show and they were talking about other artists. They were talking about this old school artist and where he kind of fades out the line. So for instance, like if it was more, I don't find this to be distracting, but I'll use this as an example because it's on the screen.
Sure.
So the door frame, frame.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
The door frame is pointing directly into the middle character's skull. So like that line for me, it's not distracting, but there are other scenarios where that can be. And so what I would do was, as the line touches the character's head, I would lightly scribble it out and like I would turn down the opacity. So it's just like, I'll make it disappear basically where it meets the head. I'll get rid of it completely. And then I'll fade it back up into, you know, the full line. So that way it kind of pushes the background to the back.
Yes. And that is, I wonder, there might be an example I can show. I'll dig it up while I'm talking. One of the small, very comic-y concessions I make in DvsM is sometimes, especially being strict black and white, I can have something like maybe a darkish thing on a dark background where it can get a little hard to see. And once in a while I will add like a harsh, not a harsh, but like a bold, lighter outline to something.
I do that too.
So it pops, you know, so it's easier to tell what you're looking at. And that's something it's more graphic than I typically do with DvsM. But, you know, legibility is king. Right. You know, like you want the viewer to understand what they're looking at, you know, and even if like I've committed to it, that was sort of, anytime you see me make a small concession like that, where it's like, this isn't normally how I do it, but I'm going to do it this way, just this once. It's usually because I'm concerned about legibility. An example of that in 97 was in the canyon battle. I wanted this canyon background all the time, and doing that harsh black, it kind of muddied every panel where it was really hard. You know, sometimes I felt like it was really difficult to tell what you were looking at. And difficult to understand where characters were and where everything, it flattened the whole image. So that was the one time in all of well, there are two times technically, but the first major time in DvsM where I used a gray tone. Like I made the background gray just because it's like, it's going to be too confusing. I don't want to drop the background out entirely. I want to people to remember where they are. I don't want just a white background. I want to show this canyon, but I can't do it black because it gets too visually confusing. But here's one. I'm going to do a screen cap.
It's funny because those little rules, those little concessions that you're giving yourself and like your own rules, like no one knows them but you. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so
Yes.
when you're like, I don't normally do this here, and you have to kind of talk yourself into doing it because it's not part of the routine or the norm that goes into the book, and you're just like, it'll be fine this time. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And everyone else just doesn't notice at all, you know, for the
Yeah.
most part.
No, not yeah, usually not. Or they might, but then like I think even they will be like, I kind of see why you did it here, you know. So this is a panel. This one's a little. This is maybe the most spoilery, not spoilery, but it's the most revealing of that I've publicly shared of DvsM 1979 so far. But it's a good example of what I'm talking about. So this scene, I would draw your attention to the fin on the alien's ray gun, where there's shadow behind it. I wanted the kind of shine of it. I wanted to stand out. I didn't want to like take away from that fin of the ray gun. So I did add sort of a white stroke around it just to make it pop a little bit more from the background. And that's something normal.
That silhouette is super clean too. And it's just not something that stands out as being wrong. Like I said, like these are our own roles that we put on ourselves.
Right.
I don't know that anyone would even notice that that's what you did there.
And and that's probably good because it's not, you don't really want them to notice. Right. You just want it to make sense and move on, almost like perspective. Like you don't really want, you're not trying to show off your perspective. You don't want to have a thing where someone's looking, it's like, wow, how did he do that perspective? Like, to me, that's, again, like you've lost the plot. It's not that kind of comic. Like, if people are looking at the perspective, like something's wrong. Like, I think the point is to make it correct enough that you don't notice, you know, where it's like, yeah, it looks right. And you accept it and you move on, you know? So, like,
I'm reading Ed and Squatch troll both of us in the comments.
Yeah, I'm trying to ignore it. Let's see here. But hey, Jason, how are you doing? Let's see here. What is this? In the same ballpark, I've often gotten compliments about Scott's artwork with vehicles and buildings. Is he a concept artist for cars? Is he an architect? Well, see, that's flattering.
Oh, that's nice.
But yeah, to me, like, I didn't want like a big shine around the ray gun. I didn't want it to make it very obvious. It's like, oh, look at the ray gun. I don't want to draw attention to it. I just want it very clear what's there while you're looking at other things. I want you to be looking at the alien's face. I want you to be looking at Dr. Wagner's hand on his arm. I want you to be looking at the shadow of Dr. Wagner on the wall in the background, you know, like to get a sense of what her body is doing. Like that's where I'd rather the reader was looking. But I also don't want them to look at this weird fin on the ray gun and kind of be confused at what they're looking at. You know, yeah. I want to just like, let's just make it very obvious what you're looking at, not draw attention, but not distract. Like, what is all this visual information down here?
Yeah, no, your drawing is a clear direction. Like it goes from this character's left arm leading downward. You stop at the watch for a second and you see where the arm is going. It's grabbing the alien's arm, which brings you up to the alien's face. So the ray gun itself isn't distracting. And so your directional devices are exactly where you want them to be in the framing of it all. And but then you just pause and look at the art. You look around, you see the silhouette in the background of the character, her full body leading to the arm. And then, you know, eventually you go down to the ray gun, but it's it's all very clear. I really like your shading technique you do in here. Since you're doing strict black and white, I like the shapes of the shading on the alien's costume. Looks cool.
Thank you. Yeah, so I imagined I think I started to explore this in '97, but with this comic especially, I deciding in my mind that the aliens' bodysuits are shiny, you know, and so then like, okay, well that allows me to show off like their musculature.
P. Diddy and what was this dude's name? Oh shit. It's the two guys. Ed, what's the P. Diddy's guy? Mace. They got the shiny outfits and like
they're very pimpy. But yeah, no, they're like, I am at, and especially, I wanted to double down on it, especially in this issue, which, again, I've been talking for weeks now, months, I guess, about this dark room with weird directional lighting. Like, if they have a dark matte bodysuit, like, you're not even going to see them. You know, they're going to, so it's like, well, now this is even more reason to make their suit shiny, so you can get like rim lighting and little highlights and stuff like that, you know, to make it visually interesting.
Plus there.
And yeah, I did a little bit, I don't do a ton of it, but I do a little bit of kind of like the feathering for the you know, just because I don't do a lot of cross hatching, and I don't do gray tones, and I don't do a lot of stippling. So it's like, okay, well, how am I going to show like shapes and things? Well, and that sort of transitions from like high shine to dark. We'll do a little bit of feathered edges. So I'm it's weird to say about your own stuff. I'm happy with how this scene turned out. Like, you know, when I look at the several pages of it, like, I think it looks cool, and it's visually fun, and it's unlike anything I've done in previous DvsMs, and actually makes me, I think about you a lot with this, makes me take a dimmer view of DvsM 1975, where I have a lot of dark scenes where it's like, I could have done those better. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, and I'm resisting the urge to want to do like director's cut of DvsM 1975. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it.
I was pondering stuff with my books after getting some notes from our editor, and I was talking about like going back, doing the changes, and then re-releasing them as second printing. And it's like, no, that's stupid. You should just fix them in the trade paperback. So like eventually, you know, I want to get away from having tons of single issues. Like I still want them on the table, but they'll be in way lesser quantities. And I want the main focus to basically be the trades. Like, hey, if you want the whole stories, grab the trades. And then that will have the updated dialogue, any kind of things that we were missing in those original first printings in the comics, they'll be adjusted in the trade. And I think that like also leads to a bigger selling point to get the trades. It's like, you can get the singles, your single issue collector, that's cool. But also, you know, if you get the trades, this is what the difference is. And you never know, there might be completionists out there who want like the single issues and the trade just to see what the differences are.
Yes. You know, and that's something, I don't know, this is years away, but so my plan, once I finish this one, is sometime later this year, I do want to figure out like a trade for what I'm going to be calling DvsM Part 1, which are the first 3 issues. And the second 3 will be Part 2. I don't intend to do any changes to the comics for the first trade, the Part 1 trade.
Okay.
Just because I would like to get it out this year, and I don't want to get lost in the weeds of like, you know, going back and maybe, you know, fussing with old stuff. But when the day comes that I'm considering a trade for all 6, the complete DvsM collection, the hardcover DvsM Bible, that would be maybe when I would go back. It's like, let's get some of this art current, you know, and exactly what you're saying. If you want the original versions, you can get trade 1 and trade 2, you know, like Part 1, Part 2. There might still be floppies floating around that I don't intend to be selling them anymore, but you'll be able to track them down someplace. Right. So like, if you want the original versions, they're out there. Like, I would never do like the Lucas move of like, you can't get the originals anymore. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. But I do like the idea of, if there is ever going to be like a complete story of DvsM, the whole thing in one place, then maybe going in where I can live with all of it. And not have these old panels from like 5 years ago where it's like, ugh. Yeah, like, I could do that a lot better now.
Why? Yeah, why? That's the thing for me is, why not update it and improve it if you can? Like, you can see in your old work, you're like, I see what I was going for, but I didn't nail it. Well, you're a better artist now today than you were then. So why not go back and adjust it, especially if you're going to do a hardcover compendium edition. This is the ultimate edition for anyone who wants to read this book.
Yes.
This is,
if you just want to be one and done, you know, if you want the ultimate DvsM experience, if you're not some super fan that wants to see, this isn't Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass where there's 9 editions, like going, you know, and you need every single one. No, if you just want like, what is the definitive, what's the Blade Runner ultimate cut, you know, with all like, it's like, okay, this one. And that would be the one where I'd go in and at least fix the panels that are offensive to me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't sit and redraw 75. I don't have that kind of time. But there are specific panels, you know, that I would just like, this could be better. This could be a lot better. And I have a better idea now. And I've done this more now. And I've figured out things from doing the later ones. Like I'll apply that knowledge to the first. But
yeah. All right, my man. I got to get out of here. I got some shit to do. I got one more page to letter, and I met my quota for the day. So that's always good to knock it out quickly. Well,
my intention is once I'm done here to just, I don't know if I can finish my page 53 today, but I know I can get damn close. So that's the goal. At least damn close. Maybe finish, but at least damn close.
As long as you're striving for it, that's all you can do, right?
All you can do is just move the ball forward. That's it.
Yeah.
So that's the goal today. But I appreciate you coming by, especially a fellow SketchUpper.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I don't know what nerds are in here, but if you don't know who I am, go to @ScottLost, SEOTTLOST, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, .com/ScottLost. And if you want to pick up my books, Second Shift and Wonders of Melisande, they're at accidentalaliens.com. Second Shift is minimum wage workers during the day and superheroes at night. Wonders of Melisande, anthropomorphic dinosaurs versus humans. 1,000 years in the future, we start colonizing other planets and come across the planet Melisande, where the meteor never hit and dinosaurs of that world survived and evolved. So it's two dominant species trying to coexist on one planet. Gary, does that work?
It never works.
It never works. All right.
Never works.
You guys check those books out, accidentalaliens.com. It was great talking to you, my friend. I'll see you in the group chat.
Yes. Yeah. See you later.
Cheers.
All right. Scott Lost, everybody. So that's what I had today. I was going to talk a little bit, a lot about SketchUp. You got a sneak preview of DvsM 1979, which I hadn't planned, but sure, why not? And 3 additional book reveals. What else? Oh, so I don't know for sure. You'll have to just kind of be subscribed with alerts to know. So I'm approaching, I have right now, once I finish this page I'm working on, I'll have 7 pages left of this comic. Once I hit 5 pages left, never works. Once I have 5 pages left, that will be like big countdown mode, where I'll be like doing more updates on my Instagram. I think I talked about this before, since it's like a 5 left countdown. I think once a week I'll do like 5 pages left, 4 pages left, 3 pages left, whatever. And with each post have like some sort of bit of number related trivia for DvsM 1979. I don't know what those things are yet. I did something similar for DvsM 1997, where I'll just pick out like this many aliens, this many deaths, this many swear words, this many whatever, you know, like I'll just start, like, it'll be funny, like little countdown things as we're getting to like no pages left to draw. That's going to start with 5 pages left. But between now and then, especially when I'm working on this 2-page spread, I may take a brief hiatus from the live stream, just because, well, one, to kind of gear up and think more about the countdown, like the final stretch. Also, just because I kind of am feeling tired at the end of the marathon, and kind of feeling like I just want to go into head down mode and like, you know, just like push. There is something about being this close to done that is not, actually, it's not that I'm that close. If there was 2 pages left, I think I would be psyched and like really have an energy boost. But when you're like 7 or 8 pages left, where I am now, which is like 2 months of drawing, it's kind of exhausting. The only analogy I can give, I don't know if you guys, any kind of exercise, I think of planking, but like whatever exercise, like you're lifting weights, all right? And you know you got to do 10, let's say. There is that feeling at 8 or 9 where you just kind of want to be done, you know? Like you're just kind of like it just, you know, and it like just before 10, like you get it back where it's like, okay, now I can do it. I can finish this. But there's that lull. For me, like I do a fair amount of planking, just, you know, for exercise. And like, let's say you're going to like, I'm going to plank for 1 minute or 2 minutes, whatever your thing is. If you're watching the clock and you know you have 15 seconds left, you feel like that's the hardest stretch. It's not when you have 5 seconds to go. It's not when you have 45 seconds to go. There's like this late, just before the end point where you're like, maybe that's enough. And like, that's the hardest part. That's the hardest hump to get past. It's why like when I'm planking, I don't look at the clock. Like I just set a little timer and don't look at it. And when it goes off, I'm done. That's the stage I'm at with drawing DvsM 1979 right now. The end is just on the horizon, but it's still like I just am kind of like, oh, I don't want to do anything. I just want to sleep in. I want to watch movies. I want to clean my room. Like I just like I'm like wiped out. To assist me in getting to the finish line, I was thinking I might just not do live streams until I'm at 5 pages left. Once I'm at 5 pages left, then I might pop back. So it's possible, unless something comes up, unless someone's like, I have an idea for a topic and I want to go on and talk with you about it or whatever, I probably won't do a live stream next week or the week after. And that I think that will put me at 5 pages left. And then so I might take 2 weeks off. But I don't know. Again, if you're subscribed, if you have the bell clicked on, like you'll know if I'm going to go online. But I don't know. We'll see. Today, that's how I'm feeling. It's like, I think I might take 2 weeks off just to kind of work on my 2-page spread and kind of get into the home stretch. The literal like home stretch, like 5 pages to go. That's when it'll really feel like, okay, we're getting close. Once I get into March, I'll really feel like that's when I'm expecting to kind of feel my second wind. Because we'll be talking about less than a month left before I'm done. That's when I'll feel like, okay, like I think I'll get my energy back and I'll really want to just like pull it all together. But right now I'm just fried. So let's see here. Thank you, Frank, for sharing Scott's info. Squatch. Well, you know, I'm always happy to go on Tarako Creative Cast. But I especially will be looking to appear places once the comic is done and printed and for sale. And ideally, I'm not going to pressure anybody to do this, but what I would prefer is go on shows where they have already read it. If for no other reason than I'm talked out on the process. Like I've been doing these live streams once a week for like 40 weeks now. Like it's all on the field. I don't know what else to say. What I haven't been talking about and what I'm, you know, champing at the bit to talk about is like DvsM 1979, like the comic, the story, decisions I made, the characters in it, what I was trying to do, like blah, 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 like the art. Like I want to talk about that now. like, and if so let's say I put in the order for the books, and I could go on shows and promote like, pre-order your copy now. I don't know what we can talk about, you know, like it's all just like, yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah, I wrote the script a year ago and blah, blah, blah. Like this is all, again, it's all like, I don't know. If you're interested in that, watch my live streams. I would rather talk about, like, I would rather do like the book tour. You know what I mean? So that's what I'll be looking for most with like shows. Like I'll be reaching out. I'll probably reach out to Lori Calcaterra of, oh my God, I'm blanking on her comic name. Someone help me out here. Oh my God, I can't believe because I bought the first one and backed the second one. I can't believe I'm blanking on this. You can just tell it's like I'm fried. I'm going to check right now. Path of the Pale Rider. Thank you. My God. Early onset dementia, guys. I don't know. No, anyway, but yes, Path of the Pale Rider. I'm going to reach out to her. She was on, I think, more or less like 82,000 YouTube shows. Like it was crazy all the places she had been. Like shows I'd never even heard of, you know, where I was like, and I was like adding them where I was like, oh, this is cool. Like subscribing to them. I think I would like to do that, but I would like, yes, I'm really looking forward to number 2, which I think the digital rewards just went out. I don't think I have the print version hasn't showed up yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I would like to appear lots of places. I would like to really try and push DvsM. I feel like this is a good point to push DvsM, where I've got part 1 done, the first 3. I think I've always been a little lazy about promoting DvsM. And one of my personal goals for the rest of this year, once I get this 3rd one out, is to try and be a little better about that. So I would like to appear more places and like pitching it more and talking about it more. But as I said, what I would really like is to talk about it with people who've read it. And I'm not talking about like, I don't need, you know, oh, it was great. Like that's not it's not what it's about. And it's not like for a book group either, where it's like, what are the themes? And like, that's not what I'm looking for either. I just want like, I would rather it not just be, hey, a book came out, you should go buy it. You know, I would rather it be a little more like talking about making a book and what went into this one. And I don't know, just a little more in depth. That's what I would prefer. That's what I'll be looking for when I do my promo tour. On that note, yes, yeah, I'm pretty sure the digital rewards for Path of the Pale Rider number 2 went out just this week or so. I think I saw the email very recently. I have not read it yet, because as people know who've watched this channel, I'm a print snob. I had backed print level. PDF came out. That's cool. I'm waiting for print. Yes, I also there's one show in mind. I know, and that's I'll be looking forward to going on Crimson Owl once, like sometime in probably April or something, when the book is out and people have been reading it, and now I feel like, okay, now I can like go on shows and talk about it. I lost my train of thought. Like I said, I'm tired. But I think that's all I got today. So to recap, 8 pages left. If I finish the page I'm on, 7 pages left. Probably will go dark until I have 5 pages left. 5 pages, I'll probably be a little more active. There'll be more countdown stuff, more talking about leading up, more talking about the release plan, all that kind of stuff. There is going to be a trailer. Probably once pre-orders open. or shortly before, which I'm still intending to be somewhere around the end of March. It'll just depend on how backed up Comics Wellspring is and whether there are any changes in the proof, like I'll be getting a physical proof, whether I see anything that I need to edit, like whatever. But I think no matter what, probably I'll be opening it for pre-orders. I don't know when it'll be shipping. Pre-order is sometime late March. Shipping shortly after. It's not going to be like pre-orders in March. Shipping June. It's not going to be like that. It'll be shipping like probably early April or something like that, or mid-April at latest. Like it just depending on how, again, printing and all that stuff, however that goes. Let's see here. Cool. Yes, because I'll also be probably in my little book tour pushing this idea of like, this is DvsM Part 1. And I'll be talking a lot more about this in the weeks and months and years to come. Part 1 sort of is one thing. Part 2 is like, now we're going to a different phase. What's going to be the same is it's still going to be anthologies. There's still going to be standalone pieces. There's still going to be very character focused. But Part 1 serves a different role, storytelling role, than Part 2. Part 1 is very much scene setting. Part 2 is like, okay, now you understand the world. Part 2, now we're going to play. But there's also different themes. Part 1, and I don't know if I'll ever get into this because I do kind of struggle with the idea of like, should the artist tell the audience what this is about, or should they come and find their own meaning in it? I generally lean toward that like it's kind of for the audience to decide, and I don't want to tell you like, well, this is what I was thinking, you know. That said, Part 1 very much has an idea to me that I wrote into it. Part 2 is a kind of not a continuation of that idea, because that sounds like, okay, just more of it. It's like, now from that idea, we go to this idea. Like, this is the next logical step of that idea. Anyway, the point is, Part 1, and there's a reason why it's a Part 1 and Part 2 and not like Part 6s or Part 1, 2, and 3, where like the first 2 are one thing, the second 2, and then the third 2. Like, it's, in my mind, there's a reason like these are the 2 basic parts of DvsM. It all goes together as a whole. It all works as individual chapters, but there is definitely a first half and a second half, and they have a different feel and a different sensibility, a different approach, trying to do different things. That's the kind of stuff I would like to talk about going forward once I get this one out. Oh, there we go. And I'm sure, I hope the Artcaster guys will have me back. I hope I haven't worn out my welcome over there. And I would like to show up on Foo's channel, of course. And what other ones? Well, I'd love to go on Runsman's again once he's read number 3. There's a bunch. I could sit here all day and list, like, there's a bunch I would like to go. And I would like to meet some new people too. I'd like to branch out a little bit, show up more places. I am at the stage, I think in the past, I've been a little sheepish about pushing DvsM because I've always had this idea in the back of my head, like, I want more to show. I want to give them a better sense of like what this is going to be. And so for the first one, I really wasn't too enthusiastic about pushing it because I felt like there's just not enough. I remember saying all the time, like, I think you need to at least see 2 to get a sense of like what this is. Especially the first time, I didn't want people to think like this is all just going to be about Men in Black and Ruben. So it's like, well, I need the second one to show that it's different things. And then I got the second one done, and I thought maybe now's the time to push, but it's like, no, I think I need one more just to show like we're really moving around and seeing different vantages of this world. I do really feel like, and I hope I can hold on to this, the first 3, the Part 1, that's a good chunk of storytelling to start showing, like really like trying to invite people in to see. And it will make me feel like you have some feel of what's like this is, while now I go on to do the final 3. So I feel more comfortable promoting it now, just because I feel like I have enough. I have enough to kind of not have to. I didn't want to be in a position of like, you'll see, you know, like I didn't want to do that. And we've all had that experience. You're in an artist alley and somebody has one book out and like they're spelling out all their elaborate plans for the future. And maybe I'm just a crabby old man, but like sometimes I hear that and it's like, I think like, we'll see. I know there's a lot of one book series out there where there was a plan for 12 issues or 24 issues or some kind of crazy thing. And like, they got 1 or 2 done and then they petered out. I'm not judging that. That happens. Totally understandable. But I didn't want people to write me off in that way. I didn't want to be showing people 75 and saying like, I got big ideas. Like I wanted to show like, no, there's a whole thing happening. And now I feel like with the 3, like people will be able to see like, oh no, this guy's serious. Whether you like it or not, whether you're into it or not, you know, like this guy's not a poser. He's not screwing around. He's following through. He's doing work. He's making this thing happen. And I think 3 shows it. But yes, no. I can tell you right now, worst case scenario, this is everything going wrong. The proof is shit, and I realize I got to go and redo some art files. And Comics Wellspring is slammed, and they're telling people like all orders are going to take weeks to ship, and everything is wrong. Pre-orders late March, shipping late April. I think that's worst case. I'm hoping it's pre-orders late March, shipping in like the first week of April, something like that. But we'll see. I don't know. Some of it's out of my hands, so we'll see. I'm excited to get number 3 out there. Not just excited to be done with number 3, which I am. I'm excited. I have the same feeling I had with 97, where I felt like this will give people a more nuanced and fuller view of like what I'm doing. I think, and it's not just any one. It's not like, I think if you, especially if you read all 3, you get I think you'll get a good appreciation of the breadth I'm trying to put into DvsM and how, like, what the recurring themes are and what I would love to see. Maybe I'll even host my own, like a DvsM book club where it's like talking about like, what do the main POV characters in each of the 3 have in common? How are they different? What are the themes we're exploring? What do you think this one's about? Like, you know, like just to see, like, I would like to see people's takes. I have my own intentions when I'm doing it, but just see like, what are people's reaction? But I would like people to start thinking about it in that way. Like, of course I want people to enjoy it on a very like surface level. Like that was a fun book to read. What I would really love, and some people already do this, is like that they're also taking it a step further. It's like, what is this about? Like, why is he making the decisions he's making? What is this saying? What is what is this making me think about? You know, like how am I relating to this? What is, you know, I mean, I liked Christopher Runsman's when he said DvsM was, and he didn't mean this, I think, in a dismissive way toward comics, but he said I wouldn't call it a comic, I would call it sequential literature. And I really loved that. Like it was right up there with Scott Serklin's comment of like, if Tarantino did an X-Files, like it would turn out something like this. I felt like that's a good, like I want it to be kind of a little more literary, a little more in depth, a little more like, I love comics. I read a lot of comics. There are very few comics where I would say I read through it and it's like, there's a theme here. You know, this character represents something. Like, that's not what comics need to do, and often they don't usually do that. They don't need to do that. It's like what I was talking about with Scott Lost before. Like, that's not that kind of comic. The kind of comics I'm doing are that kind of comic. And I would hope that people who especially who are going to stick with me through all 6, like, that's why they're sticking with me. Not just because they're enjoying it, like, you know, initially, but they're enjoying that there's a richness to it. I hope. This is my ambition. More people need to know about your book. Do all the shows. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's time to kind of promote a little bit more. You do. You do. I'm very curious to see how that series wraps up. I'm very excited to see. That's another thing. I'm excited to see the complete thing. I'm excited to. I think that's a series also once 6 hits sometime, whenever that is. No pressure. That series especially, I would love to sit and read beginning to end. Because you get the impression it's all taking place in, like, what, a few days. So, like, it would be kind of neat just to read it in one giant sit. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I remember. Yeah. You know, can't please everybody. But, all right, guys. So we've gone a little over 2 hours. Usually I try to keep it just under 2 hours. 11 minutes over. Thanks for bearing with me today. Let me know in the comments. There is no right answer to this. I really don't care. But if you guys are interested in some sort of SketchUp 101 class taught by Gary Hodges, once I finish drawing the book, so in a couple months, I'd be happy to do it, but there needs to be interest. I'm not going to do it like just for me. Like, if people are like, yeah, show us how to make things in SketchUp, let me know. We could try that. It's very easy to learn. I guarantee you, I promise you, it's made for morons. And you are all not morons. Like, you can do it. I promise you. It is made, I think it's really intended for, like, interior designers who want to show you what a room might look like, or like people who are doing remodeling to say, like, this is what the new kitchen island would look like. And it's made for, it isn't made for, like, 3D modeling geeks. It's not made for people at Lucasfilm. It's made for interior designers to hack together, this is what the new living room will look like. It's very straightforward. You don't need to be afraid of it. I encourage you to play around with it. So, but yes, if you're interested in something like that, in the comments on this video, once I upload it, let me know. So, because that's that, I'll see those alerts in my YouTube studio. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna finish drawing. That's right. My new. It used to be House Rules Hodges. Now it's Gary Hodges. Gary Made for Morons Hodges. Thanks for all coming by. Thanks if you're watching on the replay. I will talk to you all probably in about 2 weeks.